First of all, let me introduce former Home Secretary, she needs no introduction really, an MP for Whittam, Priti Patel. Priti, thank you so much for joining me today. It's quite a busy news day, so it's great to have you on. Let's just start with your reaction to what Nigel Farage was saying earlier, because I know you were listening. What do you make of this banking scandal?
Well, look, I think, first of all, we actually owe Nigel a big thank you for the way in which he's taken the lid off this whole issue. It's been going on for years. He's spoken about that. I now know colleagues are speaking about, from personal experience, about being PEPs and the difficulties they're having, politically exposed persons. But actually, I've seen this for years with my own constituents. So as a Member of Parliament for Whittam in Essex, we are famously the county of entrepreneurs and we're full of SMEs. I've had now, for at least the last 7 years, many small businesses coming to me saying that they can't bank their own cash without literally being asked endless questions as to the authenticity of the money, the source of funds. And these are businesses that, quite frankly, they do their business in cash and they can't access their own bank accounts. They can't put money into their own accounts without literally being, given endless questions. And this has to stop. So I think there are wider issues here. Nigel has touched on many of them, and I know he's got the campaign and the website. I think actually thousands of people, quite frankly, will come out and speak about this now as well.
Do we need a wider inquiry? I talked to Nigel earlier. He said, I don't want a parliamentary inquiry. I want a public inquiry, maybe even an inquiry headed, a Royal Commission inquiry where you can have people subpoenaed to give evidence and that it's completely independent of the political system. Would you support that?
So I do. I don't think this can be left to politicians or to Parliament anymore. I genuinely feel that way.
Or the banks themselves, seemingly.
So, these are banks that were too big to fail just over 10 years ago, and they've literally got to the state where they are now, where they've been living off our money, taxpayers' money. NatWest is still owned, 38% of it by the state. So there are so many questions here. I don't think the regulators can be trusted anymore. I think there are wider inquiries that are needed about the regulatory environment that we've had, because, to be quite frank, and, I'm an MP, I'm a politician, this has just been rubber stamped through Parliament year after year in finance pieces of legislation.
The Governor of the Bank of England, been more vocal on this? We've not heard a thing from him except a story today in the Sunday Times suggesting that he knew about Barclays blocking Arron Bank from banking and didn't do anything about it.
Well, I think this raises endless questions. So coming back to your conversation in this interview with Nigel, this is actually a question is, can the political establishment actually be trusted to ask the right questions, be independent, be probing, or even the establishment itself, i.e. the regulators and the Bank of England? So we have to look at this in a very, very different light. I think the wider problem that we have right now, actually, and I know we'll talk about net zero too, but these are the types of issues that are affecting ordinary people, their day-to-day lives, and this is because of the government, the state, regulation, the size of the state, and the way in which, quite frankly, institutions have been given a licence to operate in this way, and there's no scrutiny and there's no public accountability.
Let's talk about net zero, because you've raised it. We've got, the government and indeed the Labour Party slightly at 6s and 7s. We had the result in Uxbridge. Do you put that down to a backlash against ULEZ?
So I think, look, I've been involved in many political campaigns, way over the last decade, and I was involved in the previous London mayor elections as well. So places like Uxbridge, classic constituency, places like Bexley as well. You got Olivia in Bexley this morning. Outer London boroughs that, quite frankly, are having things done to them, policies imposed upon them with a complete disregard to residents, local people, without the accountability.
Local councils kind of operating in an arbitrary manner, because I suppose the criticism that will come back to you is, well, you were once a member of the government.
Sure.
The government's been one pushing all of
twofold.
Is it too much now? This target, I know it's been loosened from 2030 to achieve net zero to 2050.
Sure.
But there's a lot of prevarication right now among Tories to say, should we be doing this at all? Should we, Priti?
So, well, first of all, my views on this are that actually we need to pause all this activity. 2030 is not that far away. In a, click of fingers, 2050 will be upon us. The public are not ready for this. And importantly, we cannot just have the state, the government, central government just sort of saying across, again, institutions, local councils, county councils, these are the targets that you have to meet when we don't have the technology. We're not ready. Now, if we want a sensible conversation about climate and the impact of climate change, recognising there are problems is one thing, absolutely, but making sure that we have the tools and the ability that doesn't impose costs and taxes on ordinary people. This is a space that we have to be in.
Are you worried?
And we're not. We're not in that space at all.
Are these policies impoverishing poorer people in your constituency?
Across the board. So, yes, I'm out of London, I'm in Essex, but it's mission creep. All of this is about mission creep. How these policies are just being rolled out. Boundaries are being pushed more and more. My county council is talking about net zero. All local authorities are. Now, they can talk about it, but stop spending our money, quite frankly, when public funds need to be targeted and spent on issues, on public service delivery, first and foremost, statutory services. And we cannot keep having these policies just blindly imposed upon taxpayers, upon my constituents and the public, without full thought and consideration given in terms of the practicalities and what this means.
When you say a pause, do you agree with a pause then on the ban on future sales of petrol and diesel cars?
Yeah, 100% I do, completely.
These were all, I mean, you were a big supporter of Boris Johnson.
Sure, I was in his government, of course.
He was pushing a lot of this. You say about supporting his mayoral candidacy back in the day. ULEZ was originally his idea, right? So,
I mean,
has he made a mistake?
So the point is, right, governments and politicians are making decisions and have made decisions. Now, it's a case of whether or not they're practical, whether or not they're achievable and whether or not they're deliverable. The default position, quite frankly, of all governments, and I mean this, of all governments over the last 20 years, is that, you know, we can just spend public money to chase targets. We have to stop that. That is a corrosive culture. And actually, it's no different, Camilla, to banking, corporate life, corporate governance that is going on in our country right now. Everyone's too busy subscribing to targets and ticking boxes rather than thinking about the practical implications. I saw also, I mean, you know, there's a lot of news out there right now, but I saw Lord Hammond give an interview as well, Philip Hammond, a former Chancellor, raising similar concerns that why is it that decisions are made in a vacuum? And I think we have to go back and peel the layer of the onion of political thinking and decision-making as well. These decisions are made in isolation of the overall impact on the British people. And if nothing else, politicians are there to govern for the British public, the British people, not just make decisions, but serve them as well, look after their interests. And net zero is running away. You know, this is a train that is moving at such pace where the technology isn't in place, where the public are being left behind, and where the public are now being taxed and being forced to pay for these decisions that actually they're having no say off, and they're the ones feeling the implications.
I wonder if we might find a rare moment where you agree with Tony Blair, who was speaking in the week and saying, well, look, you know, the British are actually doing their best, but there's very little they can do in the face of what's going on in China.
I do agree with that. I completely agree with that. So I think it was last year, or actually I think it was the year before, when we had the big COP meeting in Glasgow, for example. Now, convening the world, actually, we're quite good at convening, but we have to, you know, actually get others to step up to their commitments as well. We're an island country. We always have been. We are leaders and good leaders across the world and the globe in many areas. But right now, our priority, and I think this even more so now, Britain post-Brexit, we have to look after our nation, our country. We have to do what's right for our people. We have to make sure, yes, even on technology, I think we've got a lot going on in technology, for example. You know, on green initiatives and in net zero. I mean, you know, it's the Belgian Grand Prix today. If you look at the technology in Formula One cars, much of that emanates out of the United Kingdom. We have a massive
so we're leading
industry
on the technology.
Here. We're doing well in technology, but it has to be affordable and applicable to the British public. And it's not just things that we can just talk about internationally and nationally. And other countries, we can't compete with China, for example,
or India. I must ask you about immigration, because, you know, obviously this quest to stop the boats hasn't necessarily happened. The Rwanda plan so far hasn't resulted in anyone being actually sent to Rwanda. Why has this gone wrong? People might point the finger of you, you know, in your previous job.
Of course.
Why wasn't this nettle grasped? What's your successor doing wrong, and why is this failing?
So I think, first of all, look, every government, and I've been there, you know, I've been there, got the T-shirt on this, we had a plan, and that plan was called the New Plan for Immigration. That was very much about being firm and having deterrents in place. You know, if we're going to, this isn't just stopping the boats is one aspect, but it's illegal migration. I've differentiated between legal migration and illegal migration. Illegal migration is something that we all want to stop, and that means all fair-minded people want to stop the evil people traffickers and the terrible things that they're doing in exploitation.
It's not working right. Lefty lawyers, intervention from...
So many things, so many things. Lefty lawyers are one aspect of this, you know, so government needs to clamp down. That's the Attorney General, that's a Lord Chancellor on the way these legal firms behave. That's been going on for years, and, you know, all governments have not done enough on that. But if I just step backwards to go forwards on this, the new plan for immigration, as we had outlined, basically said we need to have detention centres, accommodation centres for people that come here. That in its own right acts as a deterrent. You process their claims there, and then when their claims fail, you send them back to their country of origin.
Plan? Has it been
torn up the government has moved forwards now with a different plan. They've got their own immigration legislation.
And what do you think of the different plan?
So the legislation has only gone through Parliament just now, so they now have to implement this. And Camilla, you know this, you write about this. The clock is ticking and the public are not seeing change. And the problem the government now has is that the stories are all about accommodation. They've made all the stories about buying tents, about Wethersfield, RAF Wethersfield, which is in Braintree district, in my district. You know, we've got a judicial review against the government because we feel that that plan is the wrong plan. And actually it's now affecting our local community. We've got a public health outbreak, for example.
So it sounds like you think that the Home Office, since you left, has been mishandling this issue.
So they've taken a different approach. They have taken a different approach. I think I am. No, because it's hard, and I'm not going to criticise my colleagues because these are tough decisions. Well, it's hard. There's no one single solution to this, but we need a deterrent factor for a start. And removals and returns. My Rwanda plan was central to that. The returns agreements that, you know, I have put in place and others are now putting in place. We have to get planes leaving the country and show that if you come here illegally, you can't just get a free pass. Being firm is actually the stance that we should take, and that means removing people and returning people to other third countries or country of origin. But also at the same time, we have to go after the people traffickers. So the laws that I put in place mean that we can now give life sentences to people traffickers. You know, you have to literally get all these elements to work together.
A quick word on legal migration, because we found out that was 600,000, I think, in the last year. Would you like to see a cap on those numbers? Well, and if you would, what would it be?
So I'm not going to do the numbers game because I don't think that's appropriate. So the numbers are high, and we have to remember why they're high. Ukraine, Afghanistan, I was involved in both of those, and Hong Kong. I was the one that set up the BNO.
Them to come down, then?
I think they will come down. But Camilla, just a final word on migration issues and legal migration as well. Points-based immigration system is effectively what we said we would deliver for the British public as part of our manifesto commitments, Britain post-Brexit. That means the brightest and the best come into our country where we have demands. Now, what we have to continue to do, and I don't think we're doing enough on this is a challenge for all governments. We still have to grow our own domestic skills base and make sure our labour market is match fit and fit for purpose, meet the productivity challenges that we face, all these big issues. We've got a long way to go there. And until we fix those domestic issues, net migration will continue to be high. We'll still be taking people from elsewhere around the world. NHS, social care, technologies. The banking sector famously relies on a lot of people with technology skills to run a lot of the systems over here.
Let's have a little word before you have to go. Time always runs away when we have these sorts of chats. But on Toryism itself, obviously the by-election overall saw the support for the Conservatives drop by 21%. It's not looking great for the next general election for the Conservatives. I think there's also been some concern about some of the candidacy selection and whether they're right-wing enough. You worried about the future of conservatism in this country?
I'm a grassroots Conservative first and foremost. I care about my party and I care about the country and I care about centre-right politics. I really do. I want to see the next generation of centre-right Conservatives come forward. You know, we'll have a general election.
Have we had CCHQ selecting too many Liberal Democrats?
My personal view is that we've had too much centralisation. As you know, I'm actively involved in the Conservative Democratic Organisation. I believe in more democracy in our party. I believe in our grassroots having a say, a proper say, a fair, a right and proper say in terms of the selection of their candidates and the people that become MPs. And they want to hear people that are authentic, that care about public service, that will stand up for their country, and not people that want to use politics or being an MP as a stepping stone to another career.
Do you think that's happened too much in the past?
So I can tell you now, I was approached last year by many Conservative MPs that basically said, you know, if I lose my seat, can you help me get a job? You know, you've had a career outside of politics. And I think that's wrong. I've told them this, by the way.
Yeah.
I believe that politics is about public service and putting people first and, you know, putting your country first as well. And I want to see more Conservatives who are passionate about that come forward.
And what do you think the chances are, finally, of the Tories winning in 2024?
So, look, I'm an optimist about this because, quite frankly, no one can do crystal gazing.
No.
If we come together, this is really important. We've got to come together, be united and actually stand up for core Conservative values and beliefs and put the public at the heart of all of that, then we can. We need to be on their side.
Yeah.
And the challenge that we have, Camilla, is that we have been in office for 13 years and the public are going to start to feel slightly, well, you know, you've had your chance, why didn't you do this?
So what, give them a reason to fall back in love with Toryism?
And we have to, and that's being on their side, standing up for them. We showed it in Uxbridge, which obviously was about you, Les, very much so, but giving them voice, giving them heart and confidence that we believe in them is absolutely what we must do.
Priti Patel, thank you so much for joining me in the studio this morning. Lovely to speak to you.